Okay, good morning, folks. Welcome to the Nevada Commission for Reconstruction of the V&T Railway. Today is Thursday, January 25th, 2018. Would you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 1 here. If we could get a roll call. We have a new person helping us out. Tiffany DeBose is going to help us as admin. So maybe, Candy, could I have you do roll call for us this one time?
Sure. Jack McGuffey. Nick Morano.
Here.
Denny Dodson.
Here.
Joel Gunn.
Here.
Stan Jones.
Here.
You have one absent, but you have a quorum.
Thank you. And then I also mentioned, just as we get started here, that if we are doing minutes off the recording, so those folks could make sure you come up to the mic, state your name, and then also the commissioners, make sure we got our button on when we're speaking, so that helps with doing the minutes. Action item number 2 for possible action approval of today's agenda.
I'd like to recommend that before we approve the agenda that we go ahead and pull number 9, possible action approve memorandum of understanding with Story County for the provisions of the financial and auditing services. I think we want to bring this back next month, giving me an opportunity to work with both Carson City and Story County and bring it back, whether it's going to come back as an MOU or an interlocal agreement, but it's not ready today.
Okay, and I think also we might bring some of that item up under number 14 as well.
Yeah, going back and in my absence, I had a chance to go through the minutes and watch last month's meeting, but there was a conversation about working with Story County on taking on the financials, and that's certainly going to be a part of that new MOU or interlocal agreement. So I'd like to address that under item 14, and I think it falls within the scope of 14 as a possible action. So even in the absence of an approved interlocal agreement or MOU today, I think we can move forward with that process and also track those in-kind services as part of 14. So that would be my direction.
Any other comment on the agenda? Any comment from the public? Hearing none. Would that be your motion then?
Yeah. Motion to pull 9.
Okay, we have a motion to have a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. We'll pull number 9. Okay, agenda item number 3. This will be public comment on non-agendized items. Do we have any public comment from the public, again, on items that are not on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 4. Item number 4 is approval of the minutes for December 14th, 2017. Excuse me, December 14th, 2017. Do we have any comments?
No, go ahead.
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for December 14th, 2017.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second. Do we have any public comment? Hearing none, I'll ask for all those in favor.
Aye.
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 I'll abstain being absent, although I've reviewed the minutes.
Okay. Moving on to item number 5, possible action, the Polar Express update. I'm going to first swing this to you, Miss Candy, if you could.
I prepared a quick document for you. And this is the passenger total for the 2017 season, so you can see how many passengers we had and the revenue. The total number of passengers for 2017 was 24,677 passengers during the period of time we operated. And making for a total revenue of $1,132,816.75. Now that's total revenue. It doesn't account for any expenses, but that's how much we brought in. And that includes $12,000 in donations. That is actually the total revenue for the whole year, not just Polar Express, okay? So for Polar Express, the revenue is $813,487, and the total number of passengers for Polar Express is 17,470. So the 24,677 was total passengers in 2017, and of those 24,000, 17,470 were Polar Express. And then I also wanted to see how we did those 4 days after Christmas. And the total revenue we brought in for that was $103,686. Total passengers, 2,474. But again, this isn't a complete picture because I don't have the expenses for you, so I don't know how much we spent on that. But I think that it's a robust count, especially for Polar Express. And I will say that as we ended the season, I think everyone involved was very happy. We didn't have any major catastrophes. We didn't have any big problems. The weather was very cooperative. We're very appreciative that we were able to continue to do our hot chocolate the way we've done it, and that we were up to code on that. We had a lot of happy people, which is the most important thing. We've all got tons of great ideas on things we'd like to do next year. The trains ran well, right on time. Thank you, Tom. So we had no issues with equipment, staff, anything like that. I think in looking back at the last season, I'd give it an A. It was very good.
Candy, these Polar Express, are these after Christmas, is that included in the total upfront?
Yes.
So that's just a little, okay.
Right.
Do you have any additional board comment? As far as, I know we kind of talked about this at the last meeting a little bit, but I think from an overall standpoint, it was a job well done. Again, thanks out to Tom Gray and the way that the North Pole shaped up. We did it, and it was kind of a last minute for a lot of us, being a new board and a very important event, obviously, and I think we pulled it off. As a follow-up, below there, number A, the review of annual contact with rail events, just to give an update, I did reach out to those folks. Thank you, Candy, for connecting me, and met over the phone with Dave Schrank, Jeff Johnson, and Jared Ireland, and discussed Polar contract going forward. We talked about some language, some things for marketing, that the visitor bureaus would be more involved, and that kind of stuff, to give us the language where we could, contribute a little bit more than in the past, and not step on anybody's toes. But they were going to adjust the contract and get it back to us. So probably look at a 3-year deal. So once we get that in place, I'll bring it back to the board to share.
So before we move on, I'd like to also say, I had an opportunity early on to go out to the North Pole and watch Tom and his crew in action, and I have to say it was remarkable, the improvement of the North Pole, and I think that obviously we knew with the experience on the train with everything that the North Pole brings, but having the North Pole improvements, I think, was pretty spectacular this year. Great job. Knowing now that there was 103,686 that came in for those trains that we ran post-Christmas, because there was some concern on that, if, fill in the train, but reviewing the tapes from last month and the minutes, but you also had an opportunity then to have some discounted rides for locals, and there was talk about working with nonprofits. So when we, throughout the next month, working with Story County and Carson City on doing an operational assessment, we'll certainly be looking at the costs incurred for that, and if this is, near a break even, that's a great service to be able to provide, so good job.
Just so you know, speaking to the passengers and the crew for that last 4 days, it was a whole different group of people, many of whom would never have ridden Polar if it hadn't been for the discount we were able to offer, because we did offer a 25% discount for the last 4 days, as well as we did offer it to Littlest Things. So that was a group of developmentally challenged people that we were able to put on for free. And we were able to offer a lot of free seats, as well as we got revenue for them as well. And it was nice to have a whole new audience, people that had never ridden before. And we had all been concerned about having a Christmas event after Christmas and how would we pull it off, but that was not really ever an issue. And as I always used to tell everybody, look, we're not fooling anybody. Everybody knows Christmas is already come and gone. But this is a special event that's based on the Christmas holiday. So you don't need to worry about that. Just enjoy it and do it as you always do. And I think that it turned out really well. It did.
Any additional comment? Do we have any comment from the public on regards to Polar Express? Okay, hearing none, then we'll just go ahead and move on to action item number 6. This will be for possible action, approval of the treasurer's report. Mr. Dunn.
I want to make this fairly quick on it. Basically, we'll talk about the accounts payable claims of $194,623.69. That's broken out in both of the two funds. With the enterprise fund, there was $153,389.26, and the commission fund having expenses of $41,234.43. Once again, the breakout of $194,623.69. I'm going to go ahead and once again, I will move actually to item 14, and we'll talk about how we're looking at moving forward with the financial reporting and working both with Story County and Carson City. So outside of that, I'm not comfortable going over fund balances, ending fund balances, not really having the numbers in front of us. So outside of that, I certainly can entertain any questions when you go to public comment, and we can research it as we need.
Any additional comment? Any comment from the public on this item? Okay, I'll entertain a motion then to approve the claims payable in the amount of $194,623.69.
All right, I make a motion to approve the accounts payable claims, once again broken out between the two funds totaling $194,623.69.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Under comment, Joel, you didn't have an opportunity to know this, but the second of the two payments of $1,100 to Rowan Nails on the commission checklist has been refunded to the commission. We discovered that was an overpayment, and so I sent Denny a check on January 17th.
That's not going to be in the record.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we probably ought to have you put it in the mic, Mike. We didn't get that on the record. Sorry, normally you did. You got bumped.
I just wanted to indicate that on the commission checklist, the second payment of $1,100 was refunded back to the commission because we discovered it was an overpayment. And the reason that it happened was, and I went over this with Vanessa, we track or were tracking when we were active with it, the flood damage repair work separately from the general counsel work for the commission. And I sent a separate invoice for that in the event that we might be able to get reimbursement through FEMA for that. But it wasn't meant to be paid because the FEMA work was included in the general counsel invoice. That is the first check amount of $1,280.
So,
Yep, we're still good.
yeah, we'll approve it as, I think we'll approve, keep the motion as the same with the notes and bring it back next.
As
month.
amended.
Okay, as amended.
Okay, so we had a motion and we have a second. We had a second? Yes. Any other public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, agenda item number 7 for possible action. The reconsideration of the commission's action to terminate contracts with Greater Nevada Business Solutions, LLC, effective at the end of a 60-day notice period required by the following contracts: Carson Eastgate Depot Operations Management Staffing Agreement, the V&T Enterprise Fund Operations Accounting Agreement, and the V&T Railway Accounting Agreement. Okay, so with these here, what we would need to do is rescind, talk about and reconsider our stance, our vote on in December, and then bring it back up on the next agendaized item. So
So we're rescinding the December decision and then reopening it again today. Is that right?
Correct, and that's per legal counsel's advice. Yep.
Want to make sure I'm correct in my assumption. Although I wasn't part of the original motion in December, I believe that as an action item today, in my presence today, I would be able to vote on this, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mike, you got some other comments on this, or?
The reason it's a two-item discussion is because you've taken an action. Years ago, the commission adopted Robert's Rules of Order, which require that if there's going to be reconsideration, a member of the public body that voted in favor of the previous action can vote to reconsider. If that passes, then you'd move on to item 9. Excuse me, item 8.
Any additional comments?
No, I mean, I'm good with what we're doing here. I just want to make sure, because I think I'm going to try a motion. So is it going to be a motion to reconsider, or is it a motion to rescind?
Reconsider first.
Reconsider.
And then take up your next.
And then we'll take up the next agenda item. Okay. You want me to try a motion?
Please.
Okay. So I move to reconsider the commission's action to terminate contracts with Greater Nevada Business Solutions, LLC, effective at the end of the 60-day period required by the following contracts: the Carson Eastgate Depot Operation Management / Staffing Agreement, the V&T Enterprise Fund Operations Accounting Agreement, and the V&T Railway Accounting Agreement.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Do we have any public comment on this item? Hearing none, I'll call those, all that in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to item number 8. For possible action, termination of the provision of depot operations management staffing services, provision of the V&T Enterprise Fund operations accounting services, and provision of the V&T Railway accounting services by Greater Nevada Solutions, LLC, effective 25 January 2018, with approval of payment within 10 business days, all amounts which would be owed to Greater Nevada Business Solutions, LLC through 12 February 2018, upon submission of an itemized invoice for all amounts which would be payable to the Greater Nevada Business Solutions, LLC, pursuant to the agreements and the 60-day notice previously approved by the Commission on 14 December 2017, and with the return of all proprietary information, including financial records and personal property. Can open that up for discussion.
Well, in watching the last meetings and knowing that we're looking at coming back next month with an interlocal agreement, and part of this entire transition of the commission and SB 57 was to streamline, get in line with governmental accounting and bringing in Story County and Carson City to the table. Certainly, this is the last step in preparing that transition. So
So I think the only question I would have for the treasurer, for Commissioner Dunn, would be, I think originally when we looked at the agenda we have in front of us, we were also going to look at an interlocal today with Story County. So with that not being considered, are you comfortable with this? Because obviously we're going to have that gap, so to speak, in accounting coverage until we do firm up that interlocal with Story County. So as long as you're comfortable with this, I'm good with it.
You know, I think in good faith, knowing that the interlocal agreement, listening to the discussions and looking at the minutes from your last meeting, I believe that there's an intent to transfer those services and the services provided from Story County. That being said, I think once again, under item 14, we can bring it back. The intent was to include it in interlocal agreement listed as MOU in the agenda. With the tracking for in-kind services provided for that, I think if we make that as a motion, as an action on 14, I'm comfortable.
Okay.
Okay.
Jenny, do we have all the invoices, all the amounts that we owe?
I don't think we've received them. I mean, we need to receive them all first.
Yeah. So I would, and I'm not necessarily saying I want to be the one to take this shot at this motion, but I'm thinking that you then include in the motion that that would include a final invoice to be provided from GNB for payment through February 12, 2018, in addition to all outstanding invoices. And in order to pay within the 10 business days, I would say no later than by 5 o'clock tomorrow. And we can get that payment taken care of.
So was that your motion then?
All right. I'll take a shot at it. So I move to termination of the provisions of the depot operations, management, staffing, and services, provision of also the V&T Enterprise Fund operations, accounting services, and the provisions of the V&T Railway accounting services by Greater Nevada Business Solutions, LLC, effective today, January 2018, that's January 25th, with the approval of payment within 10 business days of all amounts which would be owed to Greater Nevada Business Solutions, LLC, through the 12th of February, 2018, upon submission of an itemized invoice for all amounts which would be payable to the Greater Nevada Business Solutions, LLC, pursuant to the agreements. I also, in that motion, would want to see those invoices and any outstanding invoices payable that we have not received or the City of Carson City has not received by 5 p.m. tomorrow, January 26, 2018.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Motion and a second. Do we have any public comment on this item? Hearing none, I'll ask for all those in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
I have the invoices here, so it's complete.
Great.
Except for mine.
Okay. Yeah, if you can get that to me.
Okay, moving on to agenda item number 10, for possible action, update on the hiring process for an executive director to handle the day-to-day duties for the commission. So, in our last meeting, December 12th, I think Nick and I were going to follow up with some job description language and look at this item as what we kind of assumed at the time was a contracted position. in talking with a few people, we kind of got our wires crossed. I'll take the blame on that one. That there was concern that the responsibilities would lean more towards a public employee. Since then, I think it's been other things have come to light that maybe that contractually or a contractor may be the best option. So really, today's agenda item is really for discussion on what the board seems to think would be the best option going forward. So we're still not 100% on the direction there, but I'm going to open up to the board here first on the discussion.
Sure. Well, I think if I could kick it off for the other commission members, if you had an opportunity to look through kind of the background and the position description that Denny and I put together, I think it'd be important, especially if we're still looking at, if we're going to put it out for an RFQ for a request for qualification, this would be a good time to make sure that we have everything in here that we think is going to be important for whoever is going to be the person who ultimately gets this position. So I think even before I think it'd be important for each commission member, take a look at it. If there's additions to it, we can definitely make it before we put it out either for RFP or for advertisement.
Yeah, and I guess I also, a lesson learned, I think I'll quit trying to be a HR person here, and, we'll probably ought to bring in either a Story County or a Carson City HR professional that can help us with the language if we need to eliminate some terminology in there, just to make sure we're on the same page. So maybe we could circle back with them and include this to make sure we're good with whatever direction we go.
Yeah, I would agree. Looking and having a chance to go through it, I do think if with the direction of going as a contract and going through an RFP process, you're going to want to reword this a little bit based on a contract manager's interpretation of what would be an employee versus a contractor. I do think that the benefit of having this out as a contractor provides you some of the concerns that were voiced in the last meeting with, the support staff that could be needed. And when you have an opportunity through the savings that we've created with some termination of contracts to hire a contract director, that also would then provide some of the funding required for that ancillary support. So I agree with Nick. I think having a chance to go through this, bringing it back then, and also working with the contract manager in Carson City, and if there's a contract manager with Story County. Okay.
Any public comment on this particular item? Okay, I don't know that we need a real motion on this, so we just continue it to the next meeting, or what's our direction here? We need to.
My only concern, and we obviously have it as an action item, we're not going to take action today, but my concern is in the timeliness of this. We're looking at an operational assessment. We're looking at also trying to prepare a tentative budget through June 30th, and we've got augmentations with that. The time frame on a typical RFP and contract, even expedited, Nick, I believe is you're going to look at a minimum of at least 30 days, correct?
Probably.
Yeah. Okay. So my only concern with this is I would recommend that maybe we look at maybe doing a special meeting to come back so we can expedite at least this item sooner than waiting till our next scheduled meeting.
I do like that idea, matter of fact, the chairman loves that idea because the chairman's been doing some work lately, and he could certainly use some help. So sooner the better. We can circle back and see if we can do that, get something together to get this position going, because it's certainly something that we need to, because we want this person involved with all aspects of the operation.
So if we were looking at maybe, a week out with proper posting, would the contract manager have a chance to give this a look over, you think?
Well, yeah, if we're talking about the Carson City contracts administrator, she and I went through it, and it was her recommendation that this be a county employee. I mean, if it's an issue with the Story County HR department, I can have my HR department do this. I'm not worried about putting this out. The only thing is we talked about with Nancy Paulson was with Story County taking over the financials, I'm not going to have the ability through the HR department of Carson City to pay it. It's kind of analogous to the Culture and Tourism Authority. They are employees of a separate public body right? Carson City HR department and the finance department manage the payroll, their PERS positions. We have the ability to pay too because we manage the payroll. With Story County having that function, I don't know how I would pay these employees. But if it's just a matter of hiring the employee through the HR department, I mean, that's all solvable.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Nick, and I think that's easily fixable. I think we're probably looking from the HR's direction on the language so that it meets that contractor description.
Okay.
I don't believe, and I know Mr. Gallagher is here today, can speak for the comptroller's office, but I don't believe that doing payroll was included in the accounting services when Hugh first spoke about taking over some of the responsibility for the fiscal oversight. The backside, one of the things that we discover is when you start looking at PERS, you start looking at benefits, that kind of stuff, and how we pay that, and ran into a few issues. So I'm gonna defer to Mr. Gallagher here on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hugh Gallagher, Story County Comptroller. Unfortunately, we have a accounting system that probably Ben and little Joe Cartwright had in the 1800s. This is an AS400 system. It is by far very antiquated, and we can't do what Nancy does, is agency funds, and we don't have that ability unless we go to another file set within the AS400, and that becomes expensive. However you want to do that, it's we'll make that work. We're going to get another system here. We're probably in about 4 or 5 months, and we'll be able to do the same things that you guys do with agencies. But at the present time, we don't have that ability, which throws a kind of a wrench into the payroll type of situation because now we don't. We'd have to. I don't know how we do the PERS things because it's coming out of Story County.
Okay.
So, just to be clear, we're talking about contract, not a PERS employee, right? I mean, that's my feeling, the way I want to go.
I think that was our consensus in December, was that, and
Yeah,
we just got a little turned around because of the language in our description. Without having an HR blessing, we got a little sideways, thinking this is more of a public employee. I think for everybody involved, it appears that a contracted person would work best for what we're looking for. Everybody agrees with that.
All right. So then, once again, I'll recommend that we take no action on the action item for number 10, and we table it to a special meeting where we can come back and address how we hire it, how we recruit the position, and make that final determination if it remains with the intent of being a contract employee or that of a PERS public employee.
Okay.
Okay, then was there any other public comment on this? Okay, hearing now, we'll go ahead and just move on to, or do we need a motion on that one? No, we don't. We're going to table it. I think we're good. Move on to number 11. For possible action, approval of a contract with Our Line of Work LLC. This would be Candy Duncan, and both her contracts expired last year on December 31st. And at the direction of the board, I took it upon myself to visit with Candy and negotiate a contract that is before you guys now, basically outlining the scope of work and the terms, fees, and payments, which would be $2,000 a month. And Candy and I agreed that this would be on a month-to-month basis, kind of in the interim until we find this contracted person and really see where everybody's roles lie. At that point, we could readdress with Candy, and hopefully before we get into the busy season, can see where we'll go forward. But having somebody that was available for media, for a couple of ticket questions, for depot operations, what have you, just in the interim, I think is pretty valuable, which we all agreed on in December. So, Candy, do you have any comments or questions?
No, just that I am hopeful that we can renegotiate after you do hire your contractor to overall manage it, because when you look at the duties outlined in this contract, it's actually the same I was doing before and a little bit more for half the money. So obviously, it would be good to renegotiate. And then I do have a question for you, and that is, if you approve this contract today, does that mean that then I would get paid for the month of January? And if that's the case, how do I go about getting paid for the month of January?
Absolutely, yes. I think you were normally turning in invoices at the end of the month.
Right.
So this would be retroactive after the board approval.
Okay.
Yeah, I think if you, Candy, if you look at terms and conditions of the agreement, item number 2, this agreement shall be in effect January 1st,
Right.
2018.
Right.
So I think it was our intent for you to be able to invoice for the whole month.
Okay.
And then be paid for that time as well.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I'd have you send that to me, and I'll make sure it goes through our voucher process
Okay,
to
I'll just
Story
send it
County.
to you then? Okay,
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
do
that's
that.
kind of where we're headed with that. And I think, Candy, I want to make sure, I know you and I are on the same page. When we outlined this was really looking at, January, February, March, maybe April-ish, 3-4 months kind of a thing to get us to the transition. Obviously, once the business ramps up, when the trains start running, the workload changes. I get that, and we need to revisit that. But till we get that other person involved, kind of look at our operating agreement with the train, who's going to do what, it's kind of hard to forecast that right now. But this gives us just a little cushion. And I appreciate your willingness to work with us.
I have a question on the salary. I think it's a little low, personally, for the institutional knowledge that she has, and we don't really know what our workload's going to be, but I think 2,500 a month is a little more considered, personally.
That's up for discussion. I mean, that's something that Ken and I talked about. I mean, that was our starting point. Again, I think I just really looked at myself. I looked at it as we're not operating any trains right now. There's not really any marketing team in place right now. There's not a few things. There's just some media calls and a few things that cleaned up with Polar, some decorations and the depot maintenance, that kind of stuff. It was really based on just the work right now, not when the train starts. When the train starts, I agree. It's probably not enough for that particular person that's defined here during this busy season. But it's certainly open for discussion with the board.
I think I would lend myself, and I understand right now that we're not running trains and throughout that transition, but pretty quickly, especially after our special meeting, there's a strong likelihood that Candy will be a part of that transition with a new executive director, possibly coming in under contractor as an employee. That institutional knowledge, so that workload will increase pretty significantly, I think, over the course of the next month and a half. So, I mean, with that, I know that within the scope of work, you've already stated that you must be comfortable with the 2,000, but it's certainly not what you've been paid in the past. Knowing that we're going to lean on you pretty heavy in that transition with the new executive director, I'm certainly comfortable with 2,500 as recommended.
Any other comments?
No, I mean, I think both Commissioner Jones and Commissioner Dunn have made very good points. And I mean, I would be more than happy to support that as well.
No, I think that's great. Again, I'm not opposed to this at all. This was just a starting point that we kind of went with, and I kind of like maybe I can lean on Candy a little bit more to the transition here with some responsibility. So, yeah. I'm totally cool with that. So, with that, I'll entertain a motion.
You want me to try it, or? Okay. I move to approve a marketing/promotions/customer service ticketing agreement with Our Line of Work LLC effective January 1st, 2018, as modified during the discussion here, for a monthly amount of $2,500.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion second. Do I have any public comment on this item? You guys are awful quiet today. Hearing none, I'll ask for all those in favor.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And Candy, if you'll just adjust that contract, then we'll get it signed for you. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, moving on to action item number 12. This would be possible action, engineering report. Mr. Dorr.
Thank you, Jenny. I apologize. I actually prepared a written engineer's report just so I could more or less keep myself organized. And I've also got a little summary of what we expended on all engineering, but mostly maintenance items for the entire month. And I didn't get that done until Monday, otherwise I would have got it loaded up in the packet. So anyway, following along with that engineer's report, item one, basically, as you're well aware, obviously the track inspections for 2017 are all complete with the end of the Polar Express. There'll be a couple of little inspections to support the spring operations that are coming up. I think there's 2 or 3 trains before we begin the regular season in May. There's a couple of little items left over that I'm probably going to have Gabe take care of for track maintenance there that haven't got done so far. But basically, all that work's done. We also did complete our, as required by the federal government, annual bridge inspection. NDOT also inspected the Highway 50 bridge this year. We've got sort of duplicate effort, but the format that NDOT uses is not the format that the FRA wants us to follow. The NDOT's got some, everything that they found and we found on that bridge as far as maintenance is very minor. There's some painting and a couple little minor repairs, if you will, that need to be taken care of. NDOT, I think, tends to classify some of those items as a little bit more significant, but there is nothing significant that needs to be done on that bridge. With that in mind, we do have a work list that I've asked Kent Hanford, who does the annual inspection, to develop, and I think most of that work can be done by Gabe. There's some rusting. We need to do a little cleaning up and a couple little minor items. There's a couple bolts that are missing a nut and whatnot, but there's nothing wrong with that bridge. It's in good shape. So any minor work we'll do on that, we'll probably just go ahead and have Gabe do it under his current contract. We do have an item that I also asked Kent to develop last year, but along with several other items, we deferred any action on that. There's a little bit of facility maintenance, as anybody that's been up to Eastgate Terminal, Eastgate Station has probably observed some of the hand railing and painting on the loading ramp is getting a little bit aged, if you will. There's a few little items here and there that need to be cleaned up. And this is probably going to be a question for Nick, and he's probably going to refer me to Darren, but I don't know if there's a possibility we could develop a list and possibly have public works staff take a look at that. I know they're very busy, and then build a commission under the interlocal agreement for that, because I suspect that'd be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I think we could probably do that. Are we talking facilities, or are we talking about, facility related or more public work type general support?
I think I'd classify most of it, Nick, as facility, because it's around the, again, if you take a walk around the depot area, you'll see there's some areas that need some painting and some addressing, some other items.
Okay, yeah, we could definitely do that, Ken.
And quite frankly, you guys have always been really good as far as when I call up and say, is there any chance you can fix a pothole here and there? And I think there's some justification on the main Eastgate siding road that we sort of use that for our access to the water tank as well as into the airplane field. So your staff has really been good about fixing that when it gets to the point. So, but if possible, I'll get a list, and then should I just get with Darren then on that? Okay.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I'll give him a heads up. He won't be in the office, I think, till next week.
Yeah.
But I'll shoot him a note, let him know.
This is probably, we're not probably going to want to do anything until the weather gets warmer anyway, so.
Okay, very good.
Thanks. The next item number 4, the storm damage repair work, and obviously we've got a number of different things we took care of. The one current contract that's almost done is the initial disc cleaning work that Gabe Williman is doing, and he's obviously been renting some equipment from Tom Gray to get that work taken care of. We've got most of the worst areas taken care of. Once Gabe got the method figured out, he was able to accelerate his production rate. I was very nervous when he first started, but I guess there was a learning curve. And so we still have some more work to do, but we got some of the worst locations. And of course, this year now it doesn't look like it's going to storm, but who knows. I do want to come back in. We probably want to do another assessment in probably March, I'm guessing, depending on the weather, and try to determine what else we need to specifically do. There is more work that needs to be done, both on a reaction basis from last year as well as on a proactive basis, that we're going to have to do this stuff every year to keep our ditches clean and whatnot. One thing that that Gabe is doing, he is moving his ballast regulator in under the original contract, and he's got probably about 3 days worth of work that he's going to be doing, dressing some shoulders where they disturbed some of the ballast section when they were cleaning ditches. Having that ballast regulator up, and I think Tom has agreed to let him park it up at his yard for security purposes. Having that ballast regulator is going to be huge. There's so many things we could have done with that over the years, and when we dump ballast on the tracks and shoveling that ballast out by hand and dressing the tracks by hand, it's not very cost effective. And so I'll maybe get some video how that works and show everybody when we get that in operation. FEMA projects. As you're aware, there were 4 projects that were approved by FEMA. 3 of those are complete. The first one was the emergency, well, it wasn't emergency repairs per se, but the repairs we did on the Horseshoe Curve embankment where we had a partial embankment failure. I think that was done at the end of April, first week in May of last year, where we had to go in and put some riprap, if you will, and do some work to stabilize that embankment. The second one was the tunnel number 2 repairs, which just got completed about a month ago. And that involved some grouting of the head walls where there had been some erosion, some ditch cleaning, and some miscellaneous work. Unfortunately, FEMA, as far as what they initially approved for that, we were very concerned about the stability of the ceiling, the steel liner in tunnel number 2 in the locations where it is present. And we wanted to do some testing of that. And so we went ahead and did that work. And as a result, the tunnel liner was in good shape, but there was a couple locations where we elected to, and this work was supervised by Gary Luce, by the way, who's the tunnel guy. We actually drilled a couple of several additional weep holes in the tunnel liner just to make sure we didn't get a water buildup in there. When we went in there in January, you look like you're in a shower, which is not unusual considering the rock consistency in the Comstock. Everything's fractured, but water was just pouring through that. All in all, though, we're in good shape on that. Pretty happy. The last item, the third project they approved was the item number 3 here, the NEVAC 03 FEMA designation. We basically did some emergency work, if you will, initially right after the storm to clean culverts and get some real bad ditch cleaning done. And so those 3 are all complete. The project number 4, as you were, that's the project that we actually prepared contract documents for and went out to bid, and because of the lack of funding that was available to do the work, even though we were going to get reimbursed, that project has been suspended at this point. Again, we have 18 months after the storm event to basically get all these work done. I just don't know. I mean, I'd like to proceed with something else there, but knowing what the commission's budget is, I think we're probably better off just doing a little bit at a time with the approach we've been using with Gabe there, if you will. The last item, which was actually one of my biggest concerns on the entire project, we had a culvert issue, if you will, leading to a little bit of subsidence on the embankment right below Eastgate. There was a culvert in there during construction that was one of the original culverts. I think it was an original wrought iron culvert circa 1869, and we didn't realize it was in there. But when we ended up with a 20-foot head of water on that embankment, the water found where that old culvert was and actually created a little piping condition, washing some fines out, and so we had some embankment settled in there. That settlement is complete now. We had to put a little bit extra ballast in there and raise the track up, but ultimately that's going to be an item we're going to have to address. FEMA, in their wisdom, I'm sure they know, they basically said that had nothing to do with the damage we incurred, had nothing to do with the storm, and that was only a result of the fact that we had not maintained that culvert. The last time it was maintained was obviously about 1938 or probably before that. So I could not get that as included. They said you can go ahead and apply for funds under abatement, hazard abatement program, but then we get the same issue of coming up with those initial funding to get, and then that's a competitive process to get those grants, and I just didn't feel that it was worth going through the administrative time and effort to apply for the funds, so that's basically all the repairs on that are deferred. It's going to be a $40,000 or $50,000 item to fix that pipe, because we're going to have to dig that embankment up, pull the old pipe out, and replace that. And again, I just feel terrible that we missed it during the construction, and we didn't know it was there until the storm hit us. Any questions on that before we go to the cost summary? Okay, what we've tried to do, and actually it's been Linda over at Manhart Consulting who's been more or less taking care of the trying to at least keep a approximate track of what our engineering maintenance away costs are, and that's what that spreadsheet is attached. It's actually pretty close. We go back and forth on that. I think I missed one $270 invoice that we found yesterday, I believe, but that gives us a pretty good idea of where we're at. And this year we have, I broke that down with general work, some miscellaneous items, and then we put in a category for the storm drainage repairs. The bottom line for this year, it was a pretty hefty amount of money we've spent. We spent $145,000. Of that, there was $85,000 related to the storm drainage work, or storm damage work. So that's a little unusual. Without the exception of the storm damage repairs, I don't think you can just deduct the 84 from the 144, because recall that there was some amount of work that we deferred this year because of allocating resources towards the storm damage. And the biggest item that we didn't do weed abatement, which is putting down pre-emergent on the entire track. That usually runs between the costs on the chemical, I think it's $7,000 to $8,000, and it's about a $11,000 or $12,000 item to do that every year. I basically made the determination that weeds weren't going to grow this year too much, and I don't know if I have that power to make that happen, but that was the cost-saving items. We also deferred some track maintenance work. We tried to do a joint oiling program where we basically loosen the joint bars, lubricate the joints, and torque those joints on a yearly basis. The concern there is because of the fact that we have such high curvature on that track, we want those joints to work. We don't want them to freeze up. And Gabe's been trying to do basically about a quarter of the track every year. And working up and down the track. I told Gabe, we're not doing any joint. We didn't do any welding and grinding work. We don't really have any major issues there, but it's like anything else. You got to do regular maintenance or things fall apart. You defer maintenance, and hopefully we won't get into the position of some of the big railroads back in the day, but to continue to pay dividends, some of the Penn Centrals and New York, or Penn Railroad, Pennsylvania Railroad, New York Central, way back, they kept paying their dividends and then deferred their track maintenance, and then you saw what happened to those guys. Anyway, so that's a summary of approximately what we'll be keeping track of. And again, it's probably wouldn't subject this spreadsheet wouldn't subject itself to a friendly investigation via an audit, but it's pretty close, and it's an idea to keep track of where we're at, and just so we're not totally in the dark. Any questions on the 2017 costs?
For one, Ken, I'd like to say this is great. This report you put together and the spreadsheet, it gives me a much clearer understanding of what we spent on this year. And this is the kind of stuff that we'll really need building a budget for fiscal year 18-19. Sure. So maybe we can, as we get to that point, we can bring it up again, or at least have you start working on putting something together probably with Tom, because you guys are both on the, heavily involved and on the track the most. Some things that we need to look at, potentially a wish list, if you will, for 2018-19 that we can build into the budget. Sure.
Yeah, and one thing as far as Tom, Tom did go ahead on his own and acquired that high rail excavating machine, Great All, which has got a ditch cleaning bucket we can use for ditch cleaning, and that is just I've been praying for something like that for 10 years now. I mean, you know, we had all the damage last year, but, you know, much more damage, but it just as a regular maintenance basis, there's no way we could have kept up doing that stuff by hand. I would have spent the entire maintenance away inspection budget with the guys out with shovels had we had to do that by hand. So having that available, and not that we're, you know, we'll use it probably every year from now on is what it amounts to. So I have to thank Tom for going ahead and taking that capital expenditure to buy that. Obviously, he's going to get paid for it over time, but it's probably going to be a while before he actually gets back what he paid on that. The last thing that was on my list is actually pretty cool. As you know, we've been trying to plug away with the Eastgate expansion there at Eastgate to ultimately, if we can expand the track on down towards where the old runway is, if you will, at the old Parker STOL airport. Again, we've got a 21-acre right-of-way grant from the BLM for that expansion, and we've been basically trying to plug away getting that embankment done. The Q&D construction actually put about 6,000 or 7,000 yards in about 3 years ago. That was a donation to the commission. What amounts to is that Robert Matthews and Charlie Morrow, who are the owners of TWA Tahoe Western Asphalt, who runs an asphalt batch plant in the old Maddox pit right at the just this side of the Lyon County border. They've been bringing material in, and this last year they went ahead and proceeded with spreading that material out, bringing in some water, if you will, and going through a compactive effort. So we're working on trying to get that embankment up. And so we're doing a little bit at a time. We're probably still lacking about 7,000, 8,000 yards of material to get up where that needs to go. But if we keep plugging away, maybe we'll have a spot that we just need to figure out how we're going to be able to put some track out there. That donation was made. I told Robert, he said, well, how about if I pay you guys directly for allowing us to bring some dirt in there, and this was beneficial, and, you know, because it was helpful. And I also said, why don't you go ahead and place that material and go ahead and show that as a donation through the Northern Nevada Railway Foundation and write it off on your taxes. And he goes, that's a great idea. So that's what they did. So Marcia Burgess, actually, who's the director of the foundation, worked with us on that. And they are a 501(c)(3). So that was the contractor here. Again, Robert and Charlie are going to be able to take a deduction on their 2017 taxes. My concern is that I know the foundation, I think this is their last year, and they're not planning to stay in business. So how do we go ahead and accept to be able to offer a tax credit to anybody that wants to donate something to the commission? And I don't know the answer to that. So I wanted to bring that up. You know, last year it worked out good. Robert's probably going to do some more work this year, and it probably won't be as much as he did donate, but it would be nice to at least give those guys, hey, you can write off stuff here if you give us. So I guess that's a question for back for the board to think.
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. I know the commission, I mean, I'm looking at council here, because I know if it was the city, you can make a tax deductible contribution to, and I would assume to Story County as well. I know to the city you can. I wouldn't be surprised if the commission itself, if the commission to reconstruct the V&T Railway is not in itself a charitable organization, but I'll defer to council here.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer. Yeah, so.
We looked at that some years back. In fact, it was the commission that created the Northern Nevada Railway Foundation and had several of its members as directors of the foundation, and it evolved into non-commission members on that foundation. But yeah, you can accept donations in the name of the commission. I looked at that. It's a 501c something other than 3. I think it was 6 if I remember right when I looked at it before.
That's a good point, and that's probably going forward, they're going to have an additional amount of material. I mean, I keep in contact with both of those gentlemen. I would imagine we're going to be able to continue that relationship, hopefully, into the future.
Well, and by the way, I called Robert today, and we had a little frank heart-to-heart talk because some of the material that showed up in the last 2 weeks, totally unacceptable. And he said, that wasn't mine. I will find out who brought it up, and I will clean it up. There's clearing and grubbing and broken up concrete and all kinds of stuff. And Gary Luce actually, even I had him go write me a letter about the unacceptability of this. And I talked to Robert, and I said, was this you? I can't believe you would have done it. No, it wasn't. And I said, I'm to the point I'm ready to go to the sheriff's office and file a complaint. And don't do that. Let me find out what's going on. I'll get that garbage out of there. So he's going to step up and help us clean up that mess. I have no idea who brought that in there, but I was ready to exercise my citizens' rights, if you will, for a citizen's arrest if I caught the guy. Anyway, Robert's been really good as far as that project, and so big help to him, and a little kudos, if you will. And that's really about it. I will say one thing on my financial things. When you see KL Door Consulting, recognize that's me, and subcontractor, that's Kent Hanford or RCI or anybody I've had to subcontract. So some cases, a lot of those bills are for my subs, if you will. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Candy. That's a great update. Any comments or questions from the board? Anything from the public on this item?
Jim Clark, Virginia City. First, I always want to say it's good to hear Ken's reports all the time. I do enjoy them because Ken and I have walked so much of that railroad in years past. I was a member of the Northern Nevada Historical Foundation, the Railroad Foundation, I should say, for a number of years, and I like to say I think we did some good things. But what I wanted to mention is that if there needs to be another avenue to make sure it's done legally, for the last 10 years, I've had an organization called Comstock Visions Incorporated. It's in Story County. It's a 501c3, and I help churches and a number of other places in Virginia City, including railroad as necessary, if necessary, where people make the donation to my organization and then they earmark it for a church or whatever, and then I forward that donation out. So there is something in place. All I'm doing is offering it. That's all. And it's for that purpose. Okay?
Yeah, great, Jen. Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay, well, then we'll move on to action item number 13, possible action, our attorney's report from Mr. Rowe.
Just a couple of items.
The draft of the interlocal agreement with Story County has been received by me and reviewed. It was prepared by Keith Loomis in the DA's office of Story County. I sent back an email where I had some questions about it, and one of them was that we have an enterprise fund resolution that Keith wanted to take a look at to see if it affected the language of the interlocal. We also have the other Story County interlocal agreement that would allow you to lean on Story County for assistance if revenues didn't allow operations to continue, and I sent him a copy of that as well. And then we have the Carson City interlocal agreement for the treasurer services that I think we need to address in the course of dealing with the Story County interlocal, because it would replace, I think, and supersede the one we have with Carson City, but we're going to need to address that. But while I'm talking about the interlocal, if you do schedule a special meeting, perhaps you might want to put the interlocal agreement on as an item for that special meeting, and then we could get it done sooner than wait for the next monthly meeting. You might want to contemplate that. You will receive and have on your next regular agenda the tort claims report that's required of any attorney representing a public entity. We have to give you a report of any torts, those are civil wrongs that don't amount to crimes, that are filed, paid, judgment entered, whatever, against the public entity. It'll be about a 2-minute item. We have a report from the pool. It's absolutely clean. There's no issues to be concerned, but the statute does require that that report be received by the public body and made a public record. And then, other than that, just working with Denny on various administrative things, the agenda and so forth for today's meeting. And I already indicated that I'd made the refund of the overpayment. So that's about all I got. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mike. Any comments from the board?
I do agree. I think with the time frame that we originally said with coming back with a special meeting to address the contractual agreement or the employment of an executive director, having the interlocal agreement attached to that, I think, is a good idea. Once again, we're kind of falling behind. We've got quite a bit of things to do before we start the train in May, and I do want to say that with that, though, I think we're going to have to maybe push it out a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks, because item 14, I'm going to ask the commission to take action to have, my intent is to meet with Story County and Carson City to prepare a budget to get us through June 30th. Part of that budget is certainly going to address the maintenance issues that we may face between now and June 30th. I want to have that in place to come back for that interlocal agreement. Some of that, I think, will be addressed in the interlocal agreement. So maybe a week and a half to 2 weeks for that special meeting, give me an opportunity to work with Story County and Virginia and Carson City. Right.
Any other comment from the public? Hearing none, we'll move on to action item number 14. This is for possible action. Kind of a general and operational assessment, and we do have it broke down here, and I think we'll leave it at the board's option to bounce around a little bit if we just put those down as just items that we would like to discuss. And if need be, then we'll make a motion to put some things in motion. So, Joel, I think we're going to start off with the financials.
Yeah, and trying to stay in order here, probably will jump around because a couple of them will be on the onus of myself going out and working with, once again, Carson City and Story County, looking at a review of year-to-date financials. I would like, as part of this motion, the approval to close out both of the accounts that are in place currently and closing out those accounts today. I believe the intent of the commission was stated in the last meeting to consolidate those two funds, moving it into a single fund that then would be managed through that interlocal agreement through Story County. There was also an intent then to be able to provide an in-kind service tracking that service back provided by Story County. I'm very comfortable moving forward with an action item today on 14 to move forward in that manner, knowing that we'll have that included in the interlocal agreement. Jumping down with the request for the July through December 2017 audit, once again, I think moving forward in order to even prepare an operational budget for the current fiscal year in and ending June 30th, it's absolutely required. So, looking at the scheduling, there's no doubt when we look at the operations, there's certainly going to be, working with Tom, an idea of what we're going to be moving forward for the runs this year. Are we going to have the same amount of runs that we have now with 18, the option of an additional car, some cost savings? So we've got to sit down with Tom through this operational assessment and get a real good feel for how we want to operate so that we can run it the most effectively and efficiently while maximizing the seats and butts. So with that, the only other one on the bottom on E, I'll jump down. Review of the marketing options. Now that we're paying Candy an extra $500, I think that she certainly will need to sit in the process. I would like to recommend that we go ahead and have the Carson City Tourism Authority take on the responsibility of putting together the scope of work and look at putting this out as an RFP and in a timely manner getting that back. I know that we're in our shoulder season, but we probably should have started marketing, a month ago. And we still have that opportunity, knowing that the CTA in Carson City and the Visitors Authority in Virginia City are marketing the train, but we need to get somebody in place. And I know that I would make the assumption that Smith & Jones certainly will go back and submit into the RFP. But I also think that having gone through the RFP process for a contract, I think there's some other firms that certainly would be interested in wanting to provide an RFP and be possibly selected for the contract. That contract would certainly include everything down from ad buys to creative content, certainly need to include the ticketing. It's part of that process now that's in place with Smith & Jones. So I'd like to have that as part of the action item, to go ahead and have the Carson City Tourism Authority take on the responsibility with me as council to go ahead and move forward with preparing an RFP. You know, would the city of Carson City be comfortable with the CTA putting together the scope of work and then working with the contract administrator with Carson City to go ahead and put out that?
We would be completely comfortable with that.
Yeah. Okay. I think dotting our i's and crossing our t's in that manner is perfect. Okay.
So, Joel, if I could, when you were talking about consolidating the two existing accounts, for the record, I just want to point out, Story County CFO was nodding his head in agreement.
Thanks for that. That's good. A couple things, and I'll chime in on some of these. To me, we're at the top of the mountain and we got to start rolling, and it really starts with scheduling. There's many things laying out a schedule with that we can't do. We got a train operator. He needs a schedule. That'll build back into his contract as up as well. There's many things that, like you mentioned, that the operations, this new contractor that we look at, what's their scope? Do we get train operators to look at staffing? Do we look at just many things that I think start with the scheduling? We have to get that in place. We can't market. We can't sell tickets. Can't do anything. So I wouldn't mind at least taking the lead on maybe getting with Candy and laying out a schedule, just a tentative schedule to bring back to the board. Maybe circle back with Tom, sit down and see how that would dovetail with his operating agreement, and see some of the things that he'd be interested in doing that he hadn't in the past. This year he jumped in and did the North Pole for us at Polar. So just kind of open it all up, really talk about it, get some stuff on paper, and bring it back to the board. I thank you for taking the lead on the marketing. I think that's a great thing. That's the other piece that obviously we're in the business of marketing the region. That's most important. Schedule, but we got to do that before we can market, before we can sell. So those are the two biggies for me. And then building the tentative budget. Personally, I think we can balance this. I know we can balance this thing if we get the schedule right and we get all the components laid out the way it should be. It's just getting from here now, that augmented budget, and obviously looking at some of the stuff that Nancy put together for us. Knowing that we're probably 45-ish, not audited obviously, in the hole, 45,000 in the hole to end the year, that we have to make that up and then cover some operating costs from now until we kick off the train. So I know that there are some funds that are set aside out there that we can potentially request. So again, it's a big jump, but we got to get moving on it because we need to get tickets up for sale right away.
Yeah, and certainly having an opportunity, hopefully by middle of next week, to sit down with both Story County and Carson City to go over what we've done in the past. That's certainly the historical data that Nancy would be able to provide from Carson City Finance. Also the direction that Story County is looking at for the end of the fiscal year that we're currently in, the start of the next. There's no doubt we all understand that we're going to have to run as efficient a train operation as we can to get through June 30th of this year. I think some of the steps that we've already taken in place with the changes in the contracts, looking at how we're going to manage the train in the future, is going to lend itself to making us certainly run more efficiently. That being said, I do like the idea of having Tom give us an idea of the schedule that we're looking at for this year, working with Candy. I can then bring that back to the team that I'm working with to set up that budget. So that'd be perfect.
Any other comments or discussion? There's a lot to cover here, obviously.
We haven't discussed. I think we need an audit, first thing.
For what we're currently,
right,
the way we finished up, and I'm going to throw Mr. Gallagher back up on the stand here. If I'm not mistaken, Hugh, did we speak with Steele and Associates about potentially doing one for us from July 1 through December 31st?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Again, Hugh Gallagher, Story County Councilor. I talked with Steele and Associates Unfortunately, Vanessa couldn't be here today because she has some CPE courses she's doing, but they were going to have an engagement letter for that. And the reason for trying to get it through 12/31 is to get a good beginning balance when we start going through this thing on our system. And so if we can get that done in a pretty expedited time, understanding the tax season's a month and a half away, I think we'll be in real good shape. And then we'll be able to figure out, number one, do we need to augment or not? Number two, to figure out at that point in time what kind of budget needs we're going to need for next year.
In your conversation with Steele and Associates, with that letter of engagement, did they give you the impression that they'd be able to do this in a timely manner if we move forward with that action today?
Yes, I did. That was my impression in talking to Vanessa Davis.
Because there's absolutely no doubt, without having that audit through December 2017, we don't have the final numbers, so.
Right, and
yeah,
it's a 6-month
imperative.
audit, so.
Okay. Yeah,
we'll be
I
in
agree,
good shape.
Stan.
Okay.
Okay, so looking at this item here, would it be the intent of the board to make a couple of motions in regards to some of these things, or do we want to discuss it further? Maybe want to hear some public comment. Is there any public comment on any of these items before we make a couple of motions? Obviously, these are some critical things that are making up obviously our success going forward. So we need to get them right and get moving on fairly quickly. The goal is not to sit up here and just go through and talk about some things, but to get some stuff done, and the clock's ticking. So we need to roll up our sleeves and go to work. So I just want to, however we word it here, we need to be clear and on the same page who's doing what, and let's go out and get it done.
Well, I'm going to take a shot at making a single motion.
I'm glad it's you. We're all over the place.
I think several of these are going to fall on the responsibility of myself as the treasurer, secretary of the commission. So taking on, looking at possible action to approve the review of the year-to-date financials, to include the approval of the closing out the two current accounts that are set up under the Bank of America as of today, the 25th of January 2018, and with the intent to transfer that to a single fund account to be monitored and controlled by Story County and Wells Fargo. Also under B, request for a audit for July through December 2017 from Steele and Associates, with an approval for that to take place. C, review the potential 2018 scheduling that will be provided through the contract with Candy Duncan and also with Tom Gray. And the review of the marketing options on the action item will be handled by the Carson City Tourism Authority, to be a scope of work provided to have an RFP and contract put out by Carson City, City of Carson City. And the last of that then is the 2018-19 tentative budget, and once again that will be a combination of everything approved in this motion, working with both Carson City Finance and Story County Finance.
Pretty good, Joel. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Okay, folks, one last time. Any public comment on any of these items? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Time to go to work. Item number 15 for possible action, next meeting date, agenda items. I know we had February 22nd, 2018 as our regular meeting, but if we want to grab calendars and kind of take a quick look at something in a couple of weeks, something that might work. Anybody want to open up a couple of days?
Are we still looking at a Thursday or any date?
Probably pertain or availability of this building could potentially be an issue, but we might come up with a couple of dates, and I can have Tiffany here double check and see if we can schedule something. The 15th? Although that's a week before.
That's a week before. I was looking at the week of 5 through 9.
Yeah, I would prefer the 5 through 9. The 15th is a Carson City Board of Supervisors meeting. Can we do it a week earlier?
Yeah.
Do we think we could be ready?
I think so. having a nod from the back of the room with Story County and the commitment from our commissioner and also city manager in Carson City for their cooperation in this item. I do believe that we can have this and the agreement back for the employment of the director for a meeting on the 8th and meet the posting requirements.
Legal counsel, Mike, do you think that we should meet with Keith Loomis in Story County, getting together and getting our items on the agreement together by then? Do you think that's doable?
Denny, after I raised the questions about the existing agreements, I emailed them, and assuming your server is back up in Story County, I think he's probably got the 3 documents that need to be analyzed, and we can probably get this done in a day or 2.
Okay, great. Great, thanks. All right, so we're looking at February 8th, 1 o'clock?
Okay with me?
Okay, I will ask Tiffany to confirm that the facility is available, and then if not, we'll notify everybody of an alternate time or place where we can meet.
Okay.
February 8. Okay, moving on to commissioners' comments. Item number 16. Commissioners, any comments?
Just glad to be back.
Glad to have you back. Yeah, that's
So, Bob, I just want to thank you for years of service, not only on the front end, on building the support in the community for the reconstruction work, for all the heavy lifting, all the political heavy lifting that entailed, but your work throughout the years, the blood, sweat, and toil you've put into this, and it really shows. And I think it's a good legacy for you to look back on, and we'll keep it going.
I appreciate that, Nick. Thank you. It's been a pleasure working with the train. It's a great project. I wish it, fantastic future, and it's been wonderful. Thank you.
okay. With that, I'll ask one final time. Any public comment on any item that we discussed today or not on the agenda? Hearing none, we're adjourned.